guys, to this week's McInnes Marketing Minute. Thank you for joining us again every week.
At the edge of Falls Creek. We haven't been down here before.
The edge of Falls Creek, clearly as you can see, beautiful behind us. And today we're going to talk on a topic that we briefly mentioned in last week's videos. It's just about sellers slowing down. Just slow it down. You're sellers here, not dictators. And we think it's important that we give you the realness of what's happening in the rest of the market, other than the particular areas that are really hot.
Yeah, so last week, as Ben said, we touched on this. We gave our August market update, which had all very strong positive numbers on all points, year over year, 10-year average, so on and so forth. What we touched on basically was that this was a very bird's eye view on the greater Vancouver market, but within the market, you've got pockets.
Yeah.
So the micro little neighborhoods and areas, and those aren't all painting the same big positive picture.
No, there's actually weirdly something comforting in this. In a world where the world is going into lockdown.
Could again, yeah.
Yeah, like businesses are closing down for months on end. There's something familiar in a seller's biggest problem right now, and that's the emotional attachment to price. Pricing seems to be, pandemic or not pandemic, the biggest hurdle for sellers to get over.
Yeah, always has been.
Yeah, and to Jay's point, so the overall market is, yes, the numbers are looking fantastic and things are trending overall in the right direction, but there are pockets of the market, such as downtown, even areas of North Vancouver, they are running a lot slower. And it's not just a case of you're going to put your property on the market, and a week or two later, maybe even 3 or 4 weeks later, it's going to be sold, you're on to the next one, job done. And I think when the market starts looking good, we always get to this point where sellers always immediately start thinking, the ball is in my court. I know I haven't sold and I've been on the market, but everything's going up. I'm going to get the price I want. Or maybe we should even increase the price because the market's going up, even though they haven't got the number in which they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's in giving, again, last week's overview, it's very important to always have that nailed down in that micro. And for example, 2 bedrooms in downtown right now, there are an abundance of them. So even though it falls in the umbrella of the market is trending in the right direction, if you've got a 2-bedroom downtown in a good or a bad building, you need to be, as always, extremely sharp on price. Yeah. So if you're speaking to an agent to actually get the job done downtown right now, they're probably not going to paint a picture that we did of the whole market last week, because it's a lot different. The market down there is very saturated with regards to other segments of the market, which is obviously holding the whole thing up to the numbers that we spoke about last week. So just because you see the bigger picture numbers doesn't mean that that's for you. And B, as always, as the title of this shows, you're not a dictator as a seller. Even if you are in a seller's market, there are soft sellers markets and strong sellers markets. So being as acutely aware of where you belong price-wise is always key to getting the job done as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I mean, even now that we're technically in the seller's market here, nobody's talking about a seller's market in the same way because of the pandemic. There are things to take into consideration when you're making those decisions. And right now, if you're in one of those troublesome areas, it's very difficult. You have to really listen to what the macro market is telling you. If you're on the market for 1.1 million and you've been on there for a couple of months and you're not selling, you may have to reduce that down to 1.05 million, and then you may be on for another couple of months, and then you have to then have a further conversation. Do we really want to sell? Because the market is telling us, even though the rest of the market is doing well, nobody is willing to pay this. And you have to have those tough conversations with yourself. And I'm going to touch on this because this is my personal favorite, and by favorite I mean hated. It's okay, we're not in a rush, we'll just sit. As if magically you saying that means as long as you wait 6 months, all of a sudden these buyers who are much more willing to pay over market value are going to come around and purchase your property. Either you want to sell or you don't want to sell. And unfortunately, the longer that you sit days on market and you do not listen to your macro market, you really start becoming less and less attractive to the amount of buyers that are out there right now.
Yeah, and touching on that briefly again, one step further, when it comes to reducing, if you are going to listen to the market, hopefully you're not behind the ball and chasing the market down, but if you decide to stay, kind of follow where the market is and where you should be, when doing a reduction, the conversation we have with sellers when they're in this position is when reducing, a reduction has to be a strategic one.
Yeah.
You have to get to the level of buyer below where your current pricing is. So a $5,000 on a $1.5 million place or a $20,000 on a $1.5 million place isn't going to do anything. So just because you take the steps of reduction doesn't mean anything. Just because you list your property doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it's going to sell. These are very strategic points that your specific agent in your specific micro market will walk through with you. But I think people kind of, in a seller's market, all those details go over people's heads very quickly, and we just want to bring that right down to reality, because that's what you're going to be dealing with every day. Those are going to be the actual conversations.
Yeah, because market value, guys, is market value. It doesn't matter whether you scream, shout, pray, sacrifice, laugh, smile. Market value is just market value. If you come on the market at $1 million and you're down to 800,000 after 6 months, and you're telling yourself, I've already done a reduction of $200,000, that's a huge reduction. It doesn't matter if you came on at $1 million and your market value is 700,000. You can reduce as much as you want, but market value is market value, which is the number that somebody is actually willing to pay to purchase in your area. And that's, again, making sure that you're keeping up to date with not just the actives, but the solds that are taking place that are similar to you, the recent comparables, not just when you go to market, but also while you're on market and while you're not selling as well. It's something that you need to really hone down on. And I think a lot of people get caught up in just thinking, oh, the market's moving in the right direction, so I'll either hold tight. And it's, even before COVID, we were increasing on average at about 0.7% a month.
Yeah.
So assuming now we were in a market that was just, pricing was just continuously going upwards, if you want the extra 10 to 15% that you feel that you're worth, that's another 1.5 to 2 years, quick math, I hope that's right,
somewhere around there,
of sitting pretty. It's not just a case of, I think a common line we get is, oh, we're going to wait for a couple of months and then list in the new year or something like that. It's not going to go from A to Z in just a space of 2 or 3 months. Like, if you're making that decision, that's absolutely fine, but you need to be aware of that price change is really not going to come into effect at least for another 1.5 to 2 years.
And I think the most advantageous thing you can do is, again, honing down when you go to list to your micro market and look at the comps. Look at who's been on the market. If you're 1,000 square feet and they're 1,000 square feet and the buildings are comparative and the units are, and they've been on for 3 months already at the price you want to be at, use that as, okay, we can save ourselves 3 months. That's too high. They're overpriced. We need to get below them. We've got all these flags out there in the market that can reference this when you don't have to go through that 3 months of 25 showings and people saying, well, this isn't worth it. So use those things. Again, your agent will go through that detail with you, or we will go through that detail with you, but you really need to hone down on the micro and what's happening out there in your exact world.
Exactly. Otherwise, you will just be passed over, guys. You may get viewings that come through. If you're lucky to get an offer, you'll get an offer which is lower. You'll then take it as an insult. Once again, you do not dictate market value. The comparables dictate market value. So if that offer comes through and it is a lower amount and it's justified because of these other comparables, that's the market value again, whether you like it or not. So really tune into what your macro market is telling you. Don't look at the whole entire picture, because you're not going to compare downtown Vancouver to Maple Ridge. You're not going to compare east side detached houses to 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom lofts in Gastown. You really need to pay attention to what's going on around you. And kind of like we said last week, and you really are in for an extremely uphill battle if you don't listen to the macro market and you're just hoping that something comes around from completely left field and takes the ball.
And also, at a final note, I think, to a conversation we had about smaller listing that we had the other day and buyers coming in, you can't try and dictate a higher price with your uniqueness if your unique offering is new hardwood floor.
Yes.
Which anyone can put in, no one cares. You picked light, the buyer wants dark. It's not irrelevant, but these are not unique aspects of a home that you can dictate another. It cost me $7,000 to put the floor in, I want $40 in return. Yeah. It's a very sophisticated market in the sense that it's filled with end users, very savvy investors, and they know what these things cost, and you can't pick these little micro renovations to dictate unrealistic pricing.
The micro renovations, there's also another one of, oh, I know these guys sold in my building, but they sold too low. They sold, that's the figure. that's what's dictating market value, whether you think it's too low or not, or again, we're not in a rush so we can just wait. These are all really just excuses, and it's just the emotional attachment to that outcome, because either you want to sell the home or you don't. And that is the difference right now. It's not like you can just hang on and it will sell for that price you're hoping for. It will just sit on for days. You can look at the market right now and there's properties that have been on for coming on a year plus.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when you go to sell, you may have memories, and your kids grew up there, and we love the park down the street because this happened. Again, you've got to kind of wipe the slate. This is now a product on a shelf. You have comparables, it's black and white, and your emotional ties aren't the emotional ties of the buyer. They haven't experienced that yet, so you can't expect to sell those to them.
That's it, guys. I think that wraps us up for this week. Just because the market overall is looking good, please pay attention to your macro market. Don't think that you can start dictating everything and you're the one holding the power. You still have to play the game. And we'll see you next week.